For this panel, we have Steve Hill, the Chief Executive Officer and President of the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, Peter Evans with Patriot One Technologies. He has over 25 years of experience with venture capital and public enterprise companies. Also on the panel is Seth Shore. He's CEO of Fifth Street Gaming and Chairman of Downtown Grand Hotel and Casino. The moderator for this panel is Tina Quigley. She has her pulse on the future of Las Vegas as the former CEO of the Regional Transportation Commission and former chair of the Desert Research Foundation. This is an amazing panel. Take it away, Tina.
All right. Well, I got to tell you, when you guys asked me if I would be interested in moderating this panel, there's no way I could say no to this, because as a Las Vegan, I've been here for 30 years and having been exposed to regional issues, economic development, local politics, how things get done. For 30 years, I've been involved in this. This is the panel. These are the people who really are in the industries that will be leading Las Vegas forward as it relates to technology and infrastructure and making us smart and coordinated. Every city is very unique and different. And in Las Vegas, in terms of who your leaders are, sometimes they're cities, sometimes they're politicians, sometimes they're mayors. But in Las Vegas, really our leadership comes from the private sector, and in particular, from the LVCVA, and I'm going to be starting off with Steve Hill. So in Las Vegas, the Visitors and Convention Authority is our industry. It represents public sector and private sector coming together to advance economic development in our industry in Southern Nevada. And Steve in particular, Steve knows I've been a fan of his for a very, very long time. He's been involved in economic development. He's bullish. This is a guy who is not afraid to set a goal and just go forward regardless of politics or challenges. And it is working out really well for Las Vegas and our city. So Steve, thank you for your leadership. But I'd like to start off with you. If you could talk about technology and transportation in particular, and how those two are kind of coming together and how you're leading Las Vegas in that area.
Well, thanks, Tina. Pleasure to be here. I will just point out that the friend that Senator Cortez Masto mentioned that coined the phrase "technology is the new asphalt" is Tina. So everybody ought to know that. And I was a little concerned you were not going to call me bullish, but bullheaded. So,
well, there's that too.
Yeah, I appreciate you backing off there. I mean, we're obviously excited for the future of Las Vegas. A lot going on, and the LVCVA gets an opportunity to touch a lot of that. What we have been focused on a lot lately over the past couple of years has been access to and around the destination. So the growth of flights, both domestically and internationally. You saw, or at least those here probably saw headlines that the I-15 traffic for our visitors from Southern California has gotten back to the point that it is even more congested than it was before the pandemic. Now we had hours and hours of backup yesterday. That's a problem up and down that corridor, and we had been working on I-15 prior to the pandemic, but we picked that up and are moving that forward. That's an important artery for our city. Without it, we just diminish really the group that are our biggest fans out of Southern California. But what's really gotten the most attention here at the LVCVA and hopefully out into the destination is the first commercial application of Elon Musk's The Boring Company underneath our convention center and the plans that we have to move it out into the resort corridor. So this is a tunnel system with stations along the way. At the convention center, it's 43 feet underground. It will move between 4,500 and 5,000 people an hour in that short 1 mile route. And certainly as the amount of tunneling increases and the number of stations increases, that capacity goes up in a correlated way. We're excited to have it here, but we're really excited to have it in the resort corridor. Plans have been put together and have been submitted. For those who don't live here, a part of the resort corridor is in the city of Las Vegas, and a part is in unincorporated Clark County. So those plans have been submitted to both of those entities. We're working through basically land use agreements, franchise agreements with both of those jurisdictions. And I'll just point out a few things that I think are highlights with this system. One is that it's geographically possible. We obviously cannot widen the strip anymore. So we have to think about these corridors, whether that's the strip, whether that's I-15, in 3 dimensions rather than 2. So this being underground both makes it possible and very convenient because you're not tearing up the street or causing any kind of disruption when you build it. It is high capacity. There's the system we have in mind in the resort corridor is 28 miles of tunnels with currently 43 stations. And that system should produce 50 or 60,000 people of capacity an hour. So to put that in perspective, our monorail, which we recently purchased, is 3,400 people an hour. The bus system's about 7,500. So a lot of capacity available in this system. It is makes things really convenient, primarily because it is an express service. You don't have to stop at any station between where you get into the system and where you want to get out. The stations are offset from the main tunnels, so you have exit ramps to those stations and entrance ramps from those stations back into the main tunnel. So for example, a trip from the airport to Fremont Street downtown would be about 10 minutes. Currently in reasonable traffic, that's a half-hour trip. So really makes the trip fun, convenient. And obviously the system is affordable for us in Las Vegas. The Boring Company is going to install the infrastructure for free. The properties along the way where all those 43 stations will be have agreed to pay for the cost of their stations, which can be as simple as a ramp coming out of the ground into a parking lot or as magnificent as they want to make them. So that will be up to them. So it is affordable, high capacity, and physically able to be built. And I think that is the only available system or alternative that Las Vegas has for this kind of transportation and capacity and congestion reduction. So we're excited about it.
Well, and I think all of Las Vegas is excited about it. We're always excited to be the city that's trying something new, experimenting. And what's fun about Las Vegas too is that we're pretty risk tolerant, right? We build stuff, we tear it down. So as long as we've got the right leadership in place, those who are bullish on trying new things, we really do have the culture to be able to do that. One of the things that made it easier for you as well, Steve, in moving this forward was the cost. So when I was at the RTC and we were researching underground subway or underground rail technologies, our cost was going to be $750 million per mile. Can you share with the group what the LVCVA is paying to Boring Company for their tunneling project?
Yeah, the business model at the convention center is different because we are not charging our attendees at conventions to ride. So we purchased this system. This system was $52 million. The Boring Company's component of that was about $48 million. The oversight and the soft costs involved added another $4 million. That was about a third of the cost of the next least expensive system. Everything else was at least $150 million up to $250 million. And we got virtually all different types of responses, from gondolas to trams to monorails to, you name it, the type of system was proposed. So the cost to us was significantly less. The capacity was at least as high, and the ongoing cost of operation, which is also a big part of it, was on the same magnitude.
All right, so I have one more question for you, Steve. When you present new ideas and when you present technology to your board, and Steve's board is unique because it's public sector, it's made up of gaming CEOs or representatives, as well as elected, so mayors. We have about 6 different city entities. When you go to present new technologies or new ideas, what are the kinds of questions and concerns your board has for you in advancing these smart city initiatives?
Well, frankly, it depends on the amount of money that we're going to spend on a project. And obviously, this innovation with the Boring Company was the most expensive innovative project that we had tried. And the Boring Company Elon were easy to work with on this. And, the overarching question was, how do you know this is going to work? And how do you know that we're not going to spend $50 million and not get either anything or everything that we are paying for? So we set it up in a way that the Boring Company and Elon posted a bond that if it did not deliver the full capacity that they contracted to with us, we would get our money back through that bond. So there was a guarantee on their part that this would work, which really then eliminated most of the concern. On smaller projects, they just want to know enough about it to feel comfortable. And really, if you're going to innovate, every now and then you're going to try some things that don't work. In the private sector, you probably get a little more flexibility to do that. For the LVCVA, we need to make sure that most of what we do works, at least get out of the gate well. So we do a fair amount of diligence before we step in, but we are very interested in trying new things.
All right, thanks. Which is going to bring us to our next speaker. So Peter Evans is the CEO of Patriot One, and he understands, and so he is one of the companies that the technologies that we want to be bringing into the Las Vegas vernacular, and we want to see partner more with groups like the LVCVA and gaming. And I enjoyed listening to you when we had our introductory call, Peter, because the behind the scenes of Las Vegas, that gritty stuff, that managing the people and the environment is always really interesting. It's like understanding how Disneyland works behind the scenes. And your company is very much a part of that. So if I could turn it over to you and kind of ask you to share with us what you're doing in Las Vegas as it relates to technology.
Yeah, no, Tina, I want to pick up on something you actually said first, which was you used the words about like experience. And, Las Vegas is an experience unlike anything else we've sort of seen in the planet, and it continues to be there. People go there for the experience, and that's what it's priority. The unfortunate thing that we're seeing a little bit, though, is if we kind of counteract that with things that kind of pull away from that experience, and oftentimes that's safety and security. These two things historically have always been a little bit in juxtaposition with people as society gets a little more, risky, and unfortunately we see events and crises around things like mass shootings and weapons and things like that. And it puts a real taint onto that experience, and a real problem with that. And there's always been this challenge. The more that we want to increase security for our customers, our patrons and things like that, the experience is declining. So think of a scenario whereby, okay, I'm going to a football game and, all of a sudden we need to have, walk through metal detectors. So the experience is different. All of a sudden it's slow, there's long lines, there's pat downs. In a COVID world, there's a lot of contact, which people don't want. And so we're trading off safety and security for experience. And those two have always been mutually exclusive. So, a lot of this panel is about like, where does digital technology come in? And you use the same sort of digital technology that has transformed things like retail environments with Amazon, entertainment with things like Netflix. And the same sort of thing can actually be used to kind of bridge this issue between patron safety and security, right? And patron experience. So instead of your traditional walk through metal detector, what if people could just walk in the front door of a building, and they're covertly screened, and we know if they're carrying a weapon that they shouldn't be, right? And now you can start to take that same sort of digital insights and you can start to say, well, I can start to gain information about individuals long before they come to Las Vegas, long before they've entered my casino, on approach to that casino in the perimeter areas and things like this. And I can correlate all that digital information to actually provide a much better patron experience, knowing about you and what you like, right? As well as making sure I'm increasing patron security and patron safety by keeping things like weapons off the gaming room floor, right? And reducing these potential risks and incidents. So we're working with many of the convention centers, we're working with many of the professional sports organizations, we're working with many of the casinos right now, and bringing in technology that can actually address this conundrum of how do I keep weapons off the gaming room floor? How do I stop crowd disturbances and fights? How do I make sure I've got perimeter protection and security? How do I make sure that all down the strip, with all the cameras that are there, I've got digital insights and can give me preemptive information to protect the environment and make sure everyone has a great experience without having to give up their liberties, give up their privacy, and give up, right, their security concerns. And so we're using digital technology in that way with a lot of different cities and a lot of different casinos to actually answer that question. You know, we look at things like the DHS Safety Act. It's now mandating that many of the casinos actually have to be Safety Act compliant in order to secure their facilities. So how do you actually do that in a manner that doesn't detract from that experience? So that's kind of our primary mandate, and kind of the vision of what we're seeing is you kind of digitize Vegas and continue to enhance the experience.
As you collect this data, and there's so much data that you can collect, how do you see your clients really leveraging it and capitalizing it on it to enhance customer experience even more than what we're doing now?
Yeah, well, there's a couple. That's a great question, Tina. Thank you for that. There's a couple of ways that we look at it. You know, first off, you can correlate data from multiple different locations, right? So you start to get, you know, insights about how individuals kind of act, things like that, crowd behaviors and things like that. You know, traffic flow, so you can improve, say, merchandising from a marketing point of view, right? I'll come back to the safety aspects of this. You know, I wish to go to a casino, but I don't wish to go through the scenario of pat downs and walk through metal detectors and things like that, because that's the new mandate to make sure that there are not any more tragedies or crises that occur within a casino or within Vegas, you know, downtown. So, you know, can we use that digital insights to not only say, okay, based on information we've collected from social media, for example, studies have shown that 95% of the time, if someone is planning some sort of a negative incident, right, they're often talking about it and planning it using social media. So that gives you early insights. There's insights that come from reservation information about who these people are they're using false identifications and things like that, false credit cards. All this is kind of early site information that you can gather, and then, you know, from hundreds of miles away. And then as you get within 100 feet away of an environment, a casino, the downtown, the strip, the fountains in front of the Bellagio, a train station, right? You know, any of these sort of areas, the airport, I can now start to look at video analytics to get better insights about people, traffic flow, who is someone who could be of concern or risk. And I can use all that correlated together to get high accuracy to therefore inform security organizations, law enforcement organizations. This is a problem. This is an anomalous behavior. This is a person who has a weapon. This is a person who on social media was actually talking about doing something malicious. So now we put that information in the hands, for example, of security individuals, so they're proactive and preemptive, and they stop incidents before they occur, as opposed to reacting after the incident has occurred and now scurrying to kind of mitigate and minimize, right? Like everything else in the world, I mean, how many times have you been on, as a simple example, Amazon? You bought a book, and it's giving you all this proactive information. People who bought this book like this one also, right? Because it's correlating data about you and the world and the environment around you, and proactively and, you know, preemptively giving you insights. Let's do the same thing around security instead of just waiting for the incident to happen.
So I have a message in the chat, which I know everybody's wondering, and I think you've actually kind of already addressed it. And that was, how can you ensure that data will be used only for security and not for marketing purposes? When in fact, we actually are talking about using this data for both, right?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of ways you can do this. First off, you can anonymize the data. So it's not about you, Tina, specifically, or me specifically, but it's about traffic flow of large groups of people. Okay, we work, for example, with one stadium. They got 4 entrances, 29,000 people come in one entrance, 26,000 another, only 2,000 in the other. Is there information I can gather about that traffic flow to say, how can I make it a better experience by potentially organizing lines different, providing promotions, these kinds of things to drive people to the other entrances so they can come in faster, better, and go see the game that they paid to go see, go to the casino that they wanted to go gamble at, these sorts of things. But so you can anonymize the data so you're not breaching privacy, okay? For marketing purposes, well, let's just look at that simple example. If I get people into my casino faster because they don't have to wait in long lines to go through walk-through metal detectors, right? there's going to be a clear benefit. People are going to buy food, they're going to buy drinks, they're going to gamble more, they're going to see more shows, they're going to do all the kinds of things they want when they go to Vegas to have an amazing experience. So the marketing, to a certain degree, will take care of itself.
Right. I kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but much like algorithms, where, basically where we walk and how we're tracked online, and then they create algorithms that market to us. So similarly, I suppose we have the ability to track people, maybe not individuals, but track movement of people, and then create algorithms that are appropriate for targeting that audience.
Yeah.
Am I stepping out too far there?
No, you're exactly. So wouldn't it be nice to know if you go to T-Mobile Arena in downtown Vegas, or if you go to the convention center, would it be nice to know that the hot dog and pretzel line over here is only a 2-minute wait versus the one over there is a 20-minute wait?
Or if I want, I want the vegan option, market the vegan option to me rather than that.
Exactly. Well, when it comes, and there's one other question here I'd like to address, if you don't mind, Tina. Someone asked, isn't Clear a technology that reduces friction? Absolutely they are. And Clear is a partner of ours. They're focusing on things like, how do I get people in and scan their ticket fast? We primarily focus on, how do I keep weapons out at the same time? So you don't get into a scenario of, okay, I've got to scan for weapons. Now I got to scan for a ticket. Now I got to scan for COVID. Now I got to scan for alcohol that someone's bringing into a place they shouldn't be. Can I make that fast and frictionless so just everyone walks right in? And you're only pulling aside the 2, 3, 4% of people that actually have a weapon that they shouldn't have, right? So the idea is, let's create this fast, frictionless environment for everyone, but not do it at the risk of diminishing security. You can do both, high security and high experience, leveraging digital technology.
All right. Well, we're going to move on. I see we've got a few questions in the chat, and of course, there should be about privacy and how social media is tracked, etc. But I want to move over to Seth. So, Seth, you're kind of at this really neat. You and your family have deep roots in gaming, so it's just part of your blood. You understand it. You've watched it morph and transition, and you've been a part of it. And at this point, you're really kind of a leader as it relates to cutting edge technology and innovative approaches. Tell us about some of what you're seeing right now, what you're experiencing. And then I'd like to start to figure out how do you see a technology like Peter's Patriot One integrating into the Las Vegas environment?
Sure. Thanks, Tina. First of all, I want to say thank you to Steve for his example of connecting the airport to Fremont Street. Fremont Street in downtown Las Vegas is a very important part of our family of businesses, and I do believe that connectivity throughout the entire valley is critical. So thank you for that. The casino resorts, we're really good. Well, we're good at many things, but we're really good at one thing, and that's guest experience. And I think that it's very important that we look at the holistic guest experience, creating a safe, convenient, and fun time in Las Vegas. We got the fun part now. We're the masters of fun. The convenient part within our own building, we're also good at that. And that says a lot. If you look at the scope and scale of the businesses and the integrated resorts that we create. However, if the travel to and from Las Vegas is inconvenient, if the airport experience is inconvenient, if traffic is congested and it's hard to get from one property to another, that's something that the resorts have less control over and can really put a damper on the amazing experience we provide. So very excited to hear what Steve and the LVCVA are working on, and I couldn't agree more. That's just a critical part of the holistic guest experience. And then it goes without saying that creating a safe, and we've always provided a clean experience. We just focus on the cleanliness now a little more than we have in the past, but providing a safe and clean experience is just as important. And our industry has been one that has always, at least some of the operators have always focused on technology, whether it's using video surveillance, facial recognition for card counting, or making sure there isn't underage gambling. That's something we've always focused on. So embracing the latest and greatest, like what Patriot One has developed, it's not surprising that our city and many of the operators, including myself and one of my companies, has embraced, and we do use that technology. Sadly, it's not a commentary on Las Vegas, but one on our country, that focusing more on weapons is something we just have to do as a society. And in Las Vegas, when we're faced with challenges like that, we embrace solutions. Look at COVID. I can argue that Nevada, Las Vegas, and the casino industry truly got as high a grade as an industry could get in terms of how we reacted to COVID. We kept our casinos open in the capacity that we could, in a safe, clean, and fun environment. We kept people at work. We embraced any guest that was willing to get on a plane or get in their car and come to Las Vegas. There are not many other cities in the world that can say the same thing. And now that we're on the other end of it, I think we should all be very proud of the way we handled it. But that's what we do in Las Vegas. We see a challenge. We see, an economic downturn. We figure out how to move forward and to continue to create the best experience for our guests that we can, regardless of what challenge is thrown at us.
So as it relates to technology, and you talked about, yes, the entertainment experience, you talked about the safety experience, the cleanliness experience. What types of technologies is the industry using right now, and how are they integrating them?
Yeah, great. I mean, look, so when it comes to data and technology, our industries have always had the best in class, business intelligence divisions. I don't know how many people know, but yield rate management was invented in Las Vegas in the late 80s at the Mirage. Many people don't know that Bill Gates owned 4.9% of the Mirage, just that fraction of a percent where you don't have to get licensed, and help Mr. Wynn create the best yield rate management, which you have to do when you have a 3,000 room resort. So for decades, today there's so much focus on loyalty programs and cryptocurrency. We invented loyalty programs also back in the early 80s, also with Mr. Wynn. For a man that doesn't use a computer, he was very, very technologically advanced, and we shaped many of these industries. My focus is a little bit more on the guest-facing technology. So while we've always had great technology behind the scenes to allow us to operate more effectively, more efficiently, more intelligently, our guest-facing technology really hasn't improved much. A blackjack game is a blackjack game. A slot machine, the game mechanics of a slot machine more or less hasn't changed. The cabinets have gotten bigger. We have new IP on the machines, but it's basically the same. My personal belief is as the next generation, millennials, Gen Z, as they get older, as they get closer to gambling age, they're going to expect a different experience. It doesn't mean that blackjack goes away. It doesn't mean that our Buffalo slot machines go away. It just means that there's new styles of gambling that's incorporated on the casino floor. The casino floor is a carnival. It should have all sorts of diverse gaming experiences for all different types of people. So I'm very focused on things like esports wagering, where people can bet on the outcome of professional video game tournaments, allowing people to wager against other people on video games, skill-based gaming, virtual golf simulators where people can bet on themselves. These are all possible because of new innovative technology. And I believe that there's a very important place for all of these types of gaming experiences on today's casino floor, and certainly the casino floor of the future.
All right, we've only got a few more minutes in wrapping up. In wrapping up, I just want to pose a question to you guys. And this is coming because we kind of talked about it during our introductory conversation. I really feel, and I think we all agree, in a perfect world, all data would be available to everybody who needed it in order to move an efficiency truly towards a safe, efficient, desirable destination. And yet we all own this data. So Peter, you own some data. Steve, you own some data. Seth Gaming owns some data that they don't necessarily want to share. How do you think we start to take those baby steps towards breaking down silos in order to optimize the use of data? And Steve, I'll start with you.
Well, a couple of things, Tina. One, I think you got to take a step at a time. So, if the water authority has data, that would be interesting to others. If the RTC has data, that would be interesting to others. Starting to publish stuff that is in silos and branding it as the first steps in a smart city effort, I think are important. Some of that data may be getting pushed out right now, but if we don't brand it and call it, some part of a smart cities effort, or however we choose to brand it, I don't think people even realize that that's what's going on. So
That's
those
interesting.
are two things that I would recommend. Take a couple of steps. There's 6 or 7 general topics in smart cities areas. We're set up pretty well because in a number of those areas in Southern Nevada, those topics are controlled by a single entity. And that's a great structure to get this started with, because you don't have to do too much coordination inside that silo. If they would publish one data stream and then call that, the initial step in this process, we can start to look at adding to that as we go on.
Seth, I'm going to jump to you next, only because you said something interesting when you were talking about access to and from gaming properties, or you said that we don't really have much control over how people get there. And I'm guessing you mean like the roads and the transportation modes. I actually, having been from the RTC, I would say that there is an opportunity for gaming to be very, very involved in how people are delivered, but it does require the sharing of data as to when these people are arriving, where they're coming from, access to some of the profiles that about your property and its visitors. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I think there is some precedent where casinos share data. For decades, we've shared data on platforms like Central Credit, so that we know if another property offered a credit line to a gambler, maybe he or she didn't pay his marker, therefore the new property would not extend credit. So when it comes to making a smart business decision and mitigating risk, we've been pretty good at sharing data, right, for decades. There are companies like Duetto and others that aggregate hotel rates and allow properties to create their own rates based on the market. The Gaming Control Board does share general revenue around casinos. So there's data out there that we share, some by regulation and some just out of mitigating risk. So I think there's precedent. I also believe that casino companies today, I think I'm going to be okay making this statement, I think that the current leadership is going to be more open to sharing data than maybe past leaders. I
don't disagree with you. Yeah.
Sorry? Yeah. I think that there's a generally better collaboration amongst casino owners and operators. We've all been a part of the LVCVA, the Resort Association, so there's some collaboration, but there's also been, obviously a lot of competition as well. I want to say one more thing. I know we're short on time. There are some great technology companies that have created wristbands that you wear that allow you to spend using those wristbands that they've developed for major resorts like Disney and cruise lines. I've often and I've been asked to bring these to Caesars and Wynn and MGM. I said that's a waste. Bring it to the LVCVA. Do this from a city perspective and have resorts then buy into it. And I think if things start from the city, then casinos are going to be afraid to be left out. And so as a city, that's how I think new technologies need to be developed and distributed.
Oh, I like it. Peter, you're nodding.
Great FOMO, right? You get one of them, the other ones don't want to.
That's true. Peter, you're nodding. You're on mute, but you're nodding your head. And if I could just ask you to wrap up this last portion.
I'm just going to have 30 seconds here, Tina, very quickly. Sure. There's always this reluctance to want to share data because you wonder if you're arming your competition as we all compete for the same consumer entertainment dollar, right? But there's lots of examples around the country where people have kind of put those kinds of selfish biases aside and actually started to collaborate. And you've seen this kind of overwhelming kind of snowball effect in terms of lifting up everyone. A good example I'll point to is Detroit. If you look what's going on in downtown Detroit, Detroit was struggling for a long time. I'm completely overwhelmed with what's happening, but I've got this consortium of business owners, commercial properties, the casinos there, the sports entertainment venues, and everyone's kind of contributing in data, cameras, technology, insights, and they've created this infrastructure, which is also tied to the police departments and folks like that, that's really compelling. And I had a aha moment when I was there 2 months ago. to say, okay, this is how you do this right in terms of creating a smart city. Examples are there and everyone's benefiting by just contributing a little.
I think that was great. And I'm going to wrap up. We're done, but the close, I had one, there was a question that I thought was the question of the era, and that is, there'll be a wealth of data between the gaming companies and LVCVA to collect, use, and manage. Who will coordinate this wealth of data? I think it's a great question. I think the LVCVA is a natural, but there's going to be a lot of conversation related to that with all the city and local entities as well. So I think we've reached the end of our panel. Thank you so much, Peter, Steve, Seth. This was fun. I love this kind of stuff. It's just some great questions, some great progress.